A year ago, the Big Ten had a record 11 players taken in the first round of the NFL draft, and that record is likely to be threatened Thursday in large part thanks to a heavy Ohio State contingent expected to hear their names called early and often by the commissioner. Always fun this time of the year to check in with our good friend Greg Cosell of NFL Films to break down the NFL draft as well as anybody out there who does it. Greg, let's start right at the top. Fernando Mendoza expected to hear his name called first overall. What makes him more NFL ready right now than other quarterbacks in this draft?
Well, it's funny. I think one thing we've lost, Rick, over these last number of years is we tend to focus on quarterbacks that can run around and make plays, because that's what we see a lot in the NFL with the Josh Allens and the Mahomes. So sometimes we don't celebrate anymore those quarterbacks that can drop back and play from the pocket, in a well-schemed pass game, deliver the ball on time to the right receiver at the right time. And I think that's ultimately what Fernando Mendoza is. Now, obviously, he played in an offense that was very RPO heavy, a lot of back shoulder fades, but he certainly can make the throws that are necessary. And he's a pocket quarterback. That's what he is at his core. And I think that that's something that you still have to be able to do at a relatively high level, certainly to be called one of the better quarterbacks in the league.
Very good chance the Big Ten could have players selected first with Mendoza and second with Ohio State's Arvell Reese. He's an interesting player to me, Greg, because he's played both linebacker and that stand-up rush D-edge that NFL teams absolutely salivate for right now. How do you see him projecting at the next level?
Well, the fortunate thing for him and the other Ohio State defenders, too, is that Matt Patricia was there as the DC. So they've been taught how to play in the NFL. I personally, and I know there's a difference of opinion on this, but I personally really like Arvell Reese as an edge player. I think he can develop into a really strong edge rusher. He's got power. He's got speed. He can bend. Some of his rushes, I think it might have been against Illinois, where he had a one-arm stab against the right tackle and just drove him right back into the pocket. To me, that's where he could really make his mark in the league. And then you can move him around on third down and pure pass situations into what we call the joker position, where he sort of stands up behind the D-line and moves around. But I think as an edge player, he could end up being a really dominant force as he gains experience and maturity.
Yeah, Sonny Styles is expected to go perhaps a few spots later. Same with Caleb Downs. Now, the safety position is unique because you have to be a very special player to be considered a top 10, top 12 draft pick at that position. And Downs is that not just because of his athletic ability, Greg, but I know that NFL scouts look at him from a cerebral perspective and think he is a true football brainiac. How quickly does he make an impact in the NFL?
I think he'll be a day one starter. And I think, one thing, too, I think, Rick, that's important is I think that, and this involves Sonny Styles as well, is I think stacked backer and safety, which were never viewed as premium positions, with the evolution of NFL defense, and maybe it's the Vic Fangio philosophy of defense, which is permeating the league, those two positions are becoming more and more important in defensive structure, stacked linebacker and safety. So in the old days, people would say, oh, you could get those guys in the fourth, fifth round, no big deal. Now I think they're really important positions. And Downs is a player that's lined up in multiple spots. In 3 years in college, he's played over 600 snaps in the slot. We know he can play on the back end. We know he can play down in the box. As you said, and you're 100% right, he's an incredibly smart player. I think he just raises the level of your defense right away.
On the offensive side, Ohio State's wide receiver room has been loaded for years. And in the future, we'll see Jeremiah Smith called perhaps as the #1 overall pick. Carnell Tate is certainly expected to go in the first round. What do you see as his biggest strengths heading into this draft?
Yeah, Tate was a fascinating study for me because he made a lot of plays this year on vertical routes, which we're seeing right here. And he's not a burner, but he knows how to run routes. He knows how to attack corners, get them turned, then is able to run by them. I'm very curious to see, Rick, if he can do that in the league. Because as I said, he's not a burner in terms of pure speed, but he was a really strong vertical dimension for Ohio State this year. If he can do that in the NFL, that really raises his profile. Now, he caught a lot of passes on in-breaking routes as well. We know he can work the middle of the field. I think one area that he has to improve is run after catch. That's something he did not do very much of at Ohio State, but it's the vertical part of his game that I'm fascinated to see if that translates to the league.
Let's stick with the wide receiver position and go to USC's Mekhi Lemon. Greg, I know I cover mainly the Big Ten, but I'm not sure I saw any player in the country make more contested catches over the middle, getting drilled by safeties than Lemon. He holds on to everything. He is willing to go anywhere. What do you think of Mekhi Lemon heading into Thursday night's draft?
I think he's another guy that's fascinating because of the changing nature of the NFL. 10, 15 years ago, Lemon would have been seen solely as a slot receiver because of his size and the fact that he's not purely explosive and not a superior athlete. But because of the way the game has changed in the NFL, with a lot more pre-snap movement, a lot more formation variation, a player like Lemon fits that because now you can move him around. You can put him in motion, shifts. He's not just a slot. You can line him up in multiple spots. So a player like that now has increased value in the league coming in and could easily be a high-volume target as a rookie.
We've spoken about the evolution of the NFL a bit, and one of my favorite aspects of evolution is what the tight end position has become. 15, 20 years ago, right, we had guys like Kyle Brady who could catch the ball and then basically turn into a glorified offensive lineman late in his career for the Patriots. Now you want guys who can run, who can catch, who can score touchdowns, who basically become big, strong wide receivers. And Kenyon Sadiq fits that bill, set a record running the 40 at the combine for NFL tight ends. What is the upside of this Oregon tight end?
Yeah, well, you want explosive players. That's the way offensive coaches talk, explosive plays. And Kenyon Sadiq is that player. Now, you're not drafting him to line him up right next to the offensive tackle and consistently block defensive ends or outside backers. You draft him because he has a vertical dimension to him. You can line him up anywhere. You can split him out, detach him. You can put him in motion. He's an explosive player. The way he runs the seam, caught a ton of balls this year running the seam. There's a physicality to him despite the fact that he's only 240. So to me, he fits the way the NFL passing game is going. I mean, think of a team like the Rams. They ended up playing out of what we call 13 personnel with 3 tight ends on about 40% of their offensive snaps beginning the 6th or 7th week of the NFL season. So teams are moving in that direction, playing with more multiple tight ends, and Sadiq fits that.